I think what we've seen in the July riots is all outside of the Constitution and is an indication of a serious crisis. It is very clear that that South Africa is now at a threshold. We are facing, as Andre pointed out, a situation similar to the kind of crisis that South Africa experienced from Sharpeville to Soweto to the unrest of the early 1980s in South Africa, but without a competent state. That is the big difference. As far as the Constitution itself is concerned, we also have to face the reality that sadly, most of the elements that we negotiated into the Constitution in 1993 and 1996 have been eroded. We can no longer talk of South Africa as being a non-racial society. The fact is that it has now once again become one of the most racialized societies in the world. Simple fact. We have to consider the fact that the language rights that we negotiated into the Constitution, the cultural rights have been eroded. We have to realize that the hope that we put in the Constitution to provide the framework for a working multicultural society has collapsed. It doesn't exist. Now, the July 2021 riots are a threshold in this whole process. As we know from the news coverage, at least 300 people have died. That's much more than any of the crises that we had in the run-up to Soweto and the unrest of the early 80s. We don't know how many people, but it will be a lot. Enormous damage has been done. 160 shopping malls, more than 100 pharmacies, 160 bottle stores. Estimates of damage have ranged up to 40 billion rand. The whole economy was disrupted. Petrol refineries didn't function. The N3 was closed. Could we have the next slide, please? Then we must look at the causes of this. I think that they've been covered by Andre, but the spark that caused the problem was undoubtedly the role played by Jacob Zuma's followers. That was the spark. It was more than a pushback against his imprisonment. It was a pushback against the Constitution and the courts. The riots and the looting also appeared to have an ethnic dimension. They didn't spread beyond the Zulu majority areas of KwaZulu-Natal and southern Gauteng. Although many of the people who were agitating on social media tried to incite people to loot and riot in the Eastern Cape and other parts of South Africa. But the underlying reality of all this was that the spark set off this dry felt, this tinder of poverty, misery, and unemployment and inequality that really characterizes the lives of more than half of our population. And that has done so really since the fall of Mbeki and the successful macroeconomic policies that he introduced. And all of this, of course, has been caused, exacerbated by the COVID crisis. Next slide, please.
Dave, sorry, I'll do it manually. It doesn't want to do it.
Okay, don't worry. Don't worry about the slides. I'll just work from my own notes here. Okay. So, what conclusions can we draw from all of this? What we've seen here is evidence of the beginning of a failed state. The inability of the South African Police Service to maintain law and order and to protect lives and property of citizens is a sign of a failed state. The inability of the security and intelligence services to foresee any of this is a sign of a failed state. We have not only the inability of the state to respond to the crisis, but the underlying crisis of 27 years of misrule is an indication of the degree to which the state is failing to carry out its basic functions of providing decent education, of providing municipal services, of creating the circumstances in which investment can take place and the economy can grow. All manifested in the fact that more than 40% of our population in reality are unemployed. And all of this, of course, has been exacerbated by the COVID crisis. The other conclusion we can draw from the riots of July 2021 is the resilience of civil society, the manner in which ordinary citizens in communities came together, often across racial lines, to defend their communities, to defend their properties. Often they did so with the support of the completely helpless South African Police Service that was unable to carry out these functions. We also saw the manner in which they cleaned up after the rioting, cleaned up the stores and shops. And what emerged from this is a very clear dichotomy between the state, private sector, and civil society. State is failing. What keeps South Africa running is the private sector and civil society. Now, the third conclusion that I drew from this is the immense danger. This kind of unrestrained rioting, coupled with the racial mobilization of organizations like the EFF, leads to lawlessness, the absence of the South African Police Service to deal with the violence, creates a very dangerous situation of the possibility of interracial conflict. We saw interracial conflict at Phoenix. This is just the latest in a series of incidents over the last few years where we have almost had elements of racial conflict in Coligny, Schweitzer-Reneke, Senekal, Brackenfell. So this is a huge danger because once one has unrestrained racial conflict, all the bets are off. So those are the conclusions. This is an indication of the state that is failing. This is an indication that the country is actually kept on the tracks now by the private sector and civil society. And this holds an enormously dangerous threat for future racial tension And then what is the prognosis? What can we expect to happen in the future? There are a few things. First of all, much will depend on what happens within the ANC leadership. We get information that Cyril Ramaphosa is now under great pressure. We have the delayed National General Council. We have now the municipal elections, which will probably be delayed. And we have the upcoming national conference next year. Undoubtedly, there is enormous stress and strain within the ANC, and the outcome will, of course, be critically important for the future of South Africa. If the Zumaites or less responsible elements take over, then we are going to accelerate on the downward path. But even if Cyril Ramaphosa maintains his position as president, we're in trouble. A lot of people have referred to the rioters as the RET faction. I think this is wrong. I don't think that there's any real strong opposition to RET anywhere in the cabinet. I think Cyril Ramaphosa has never said anything at any time that indicates that he doesn't support radical economic transformation. And this is illustrated by the fact that at this critical time in our history, at this critical time for the economy, the ANC is going full steam ahead with the Constitution 18th Amendment Bill, with the Expropriation Bill, with the Employment Equity Amendment Bill, with the Papuda Amendment Bill, with the Firearms Control Amendment Bill, with the NHI Bill, and with unrestrained expenditure now to, I guess, win support from people by more grants to assist with COVID, and by more increases to the public service, which is already taking 14% of GDP. So this is unsustainable. This is unsustainable, and the economic crisis that will inevitably be created will create a situation where further riots and unrest and looting might become possible again. All of this, we don't know where it might lead, but the trajectory is downward, possibly to the IMF intervention that R.W. Johnson talks about from time to time. So what kind of action can we take? I think the coherent elements in our society, those neighborhood watches, NGOs, private sector organizations, churches, need to come together to start cooperating. What about the idea of a national civil society convention to discuss this crisis? Maybe such a convention can put together a delegation to go and speak to President Ramaphosa and the ANC about this intolerable situation. Maybe we should think about resuscitating something along the lines of the 1991-1994 National Peace Accord. We may remember that this was an initiative of business and churches at a critical time during the negotiations, when warring factions seemed to make the possibility of negotiations impossible. Maybe we need another civil society initiative along the lines of the National Peace Accord with codes of conduct. How does one go about the process of defending one's community? the importance of restraint in conflict situations, because we really don't want a situation where the whole situation will collapse in unrestrained vigilante groups. The possibility of local peace committees, where people from communities get together to start to solve problems that the government isn't solving itself, even starting to perhaps provide some kind of local services in the absence of failing municipalities. So those are a few suggestions. What we have, just to sum up, is an unprecedented threat to the constitutional democracy that we established in 1994. We are faced with the reality that the state is failing, that it is not carrying out its most basic function of protecting the lives and property of citizens. But this is only one dimension of the failure. It is not carrying out its proper functions in municipalities, in education, in the delivery of health services, in the provision of employment, in creating an environment for rapid and sustained economic growth. We must reach the conclusion, unfortunately, that much will depend on what happens now within the power struggles going on within the ANC, but that there is no indication at the moment, as far as I can see, that the ANC is about to turn around and drop its RET policies, that it is going ahead with lunatic speed to adopt legislation that will further deepen the crisis, and that this will create further instability in the months and years that lie ahead. And that, in this situation, it will be essential for civil society, business, communities, those elements in our country that keep the country running, to get together and to cooperate more with a view to bringing South Africa back toward a sound constitutional future, devoid of the catastrophic ideology that the ANC has been implementing since 1994. Thanks.